Hey guys.
Hey guys.
This episode was recorded on October 14th.
And we understand that it's the day after the election. We both in our minds and our hearts believe that the election will go the way that we would like it to. And we're still manifesting that energy.
But just flagging, should this be a difficult day, God forbid, the tone of this episode might actually reflect that. But at the same time, it is certainly in no correlation to what's happening in current events.
No. We can still hopefully make you laugh. We will chug along and we will be here together with our specific Good Children community. So I hope we're out there celebrating.
And now for the podcast. This is something I find really strange about you.
What is it?
When you wear like a pants with a zipper and you're just cocktail weaning it without a worry in the world.
Yeah, because I think if I've learned anything in life, it's like, why worry about your zipper when there's so many other things to worry about? So
it's like put on underwear.
Yeah, but like, why?
I mean,
I'm good down there.
There's definitely a few reasons why. Like, I'd say one reason is like hygienic reasons. Like, people wear underwear. It's for hygiene purposes.
Yeah.
You sweat the most from your crotch and your groin, and you wear underwear to kind of whip that sweat a little bit so that your pants aren't the first layer touching your penis and your balls and your gooch.
I'm a gooch. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that like just for the time being, like sometimes it's nice to like not have something on. I think that maybe for me,
I really enjoy that right now.
Like I need boxers.
I love boxers.
I'm so anti-box, but I think in so many different ways. No, I'm kidding. I think I like support boxes. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. But I'm anti-box in a way that like I do want a little bit of support, but at the same exact time, I want to feel so free. And right now I feel like comfortable. I don't feel like my underwear is sticking into my sides.
You don't feel like your balls are like sticking to your legs?
They can stick as much as they need.
Okay.
It's a lot to stick to.
A lot of leg.
A lot of leg to stick to. A lot of leg. But otherwise, I didn't mean to come in here talking about my genitalia.
No, but you did, and it's okay. And you know what? I'm proud of you for being so open and so vulnerable, and it would make me a bad friend to say otherwise.
That was a really, really good segue.
Thank you so much.
I just felt like for a second we steered away from the deep and meaningful conversations and sharing. And I recently saw someone just share a post about how we've helped them heal. And you know what?
Was it my queen who I met at Sweat Tour?
It must have been your queen.
Grace?
Yes. If we can make amazing Grace heal, I can talk about my balls swinging without any underwear, and maybe somebody out there is saying I do the same exact thing. And you know what?
I miss it. Like, I miss being a gross pervert on this podcast.
I agree.
I really do miss being a slimy freak.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that we stopped doing that.
Like an oddity, like something to like for people to like gawk at.
Like going to the freak show. Going to the freak show kind of vibe is what we've been for a long time.
Yeah. Should we change it, Good Children, into just the freak show?
Maybe.
That's a good podcast.
You look like you have no mullet, no facial hair, and no hair.
I know. It's because I was wearing a wig before this and I shaved my face, and like I tried to do the back of my mullet and it's just not looking good for me. And you've been telling me my face is so small.
Your face is so narrow and thin. Good children.
I'm getting voice lessons.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Good Children, the podcast where hosts Joe Hegyes
and Andrew Muscarella reflect on their 24 years of friendship,
growing up in the late 2000s,
early 2010s,
and all of the nostalgia,
drama,
and bad friends that go along with it. Have you ever felt like a bad friend?
Always.
Okay. Out of the gate.
Always.
Always?
Not always.
Always?
I feel like a bad friend to certain people.
Okay.
There's a lot of foundational principles of friendship.
All right.
And I'll say the first one is outreach. Mm-hmm. And that goes hand in hand with communication.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned about myself is there's not a lot of reaching and there's not a lot of communicating.
And there's not a lot of out.
And there's not about me. There's not a lot out.
Except for your dick and balls a couple seconds ago.
Exactly. And you know what? I've learned I can do a better job of talking to people and reaching out and seeing how they are doing and not waiting for them to check in on me.
Well, you know what? It's difficult. It's a really interesting time, I think, in the world. Goes without saying. But I remember in my early 20s, I used to think to myself, because I'd look at my parents and I'd be like, you guys have no friends. No tea, no shade. And like, you guys literally, like, you see like your best friends once a quarter. You know, like, I'm like, you actually like don't, like, what do you do? Like, why don't you hang out with your friends? And I used to always like look around at my big circle of friends, and I was like, I will see these people all the time for the rest of my life. Like, no doubt about it. And even in the past couple of years, I feel like that's slowly waned, and it's gotten increasingly more difficult to keep up with people and to see people and to maintain those friendships. Not to say that those friendships are gone, but the way that they once were definitely has already changed, and we're still kind of young for that.
I know. And I mean, our parents at least had like the excuse of not having cell phones and social media to do constant outreach. Whoa. But we have the accessibility to do all of it. But I also think in turn, we have made too many friends.
I agree. I do agree with that. I think it's because a lot of these friends, we should never, ever have seen them again in our lives. You know what I mean? Like, it should have been like, oh, we met them once.
Yeah.
We went to college with them. We lost contact. We completely forgot they exist. And now it's like we are unfortunately living in an age where, for better or for worse, we will never forget anyone we've ever met.
No.
And that's crazy.
And I find myself doing some outreach to new people and being like, we should hang, we should do this. And then I'm like, you know what? They might not want that. They might not want that.
Well, let's elaborate on that, because that's a strange thought to have.
No, because I think to your point, though, it's like I can meet somebody once or twice. But I guess that's just making new friends.
Yeah.
But then I kind of feel like when you make space for new friends,
have to make room.
You have to make room for the oldies. And it's either you're taking out the oldies or you have to just get a bigger room. And how big can a room be? How many square feet can your room be?
What do you mean?
What I mean is I can probably only have about 10 friends I can keep super close to me without feeling like I'm letting one of them down.
Okay.
And that's my problem.
And so how does that relate back to now you're getting a bigger room? So does the room represent adding more friends into your closest inner circle?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
But it seems like you can't do that.
I don't think I can.
Okay,
I think that's a learning lesson I've had over time.
I know it is really tough.
Yeah.
It's really, really tough. And I feel like throughout my personal history, I have had like very intense, close, best friendships. And at some point, like, boundaries or life gets in the way, and then you lose that friendship because you're so used to maintaining it at such a high level of closeness that once that dips for a second, it's like, oh, we're just not friends anymore.
Yeah.
And it's hard to manage that kind of relationship.
It's
I feel like both of us
bounce back.
have had really, like, I can name people in both of our separate lore that were like best friends that I don't hear you talk about ever. I don't hear myself talk about ever anymore. It's just because it like just happens that way.
I know. Because again, you grow apart from people, and that's okay. But I think that I've always recognized that the people that have come into my life, regardless if they're close or not, still are a part of my life, and they're still friends. But I feel like I leave off on term. Like the last place I left off with the person I pick up right where we started. But that's not the case for everybody. And you can
some people feel the absence more than
yes,
others.
They feel the absence, and then you get back with them, and then there's a layer of being uncomfortable.
Isn't that the craziest feeling? The craziest feeling in the world to me is someone who I feel like I am innately close to and will always be innately close to, and I hang out with them after a while, and I sit down with them, and I don't even know what to talk about.
No.
And I almost can't look them in the eyes.
No.
And I'm like, what happened here? But nothing has changed. We just have both grown a little bit and changed. And now we're complete strangers.
I'm like, what do you talk about? You don't want to talk about work. You want to like, oh, and it's the classic, what's going on? How you been? When you have to ask,
what's new?
What's new?
That's when you know it really upsets me. It freaks me out. I don't like doing small talk. And sometimes you have to start doing that with friends that you had who were best friends.
Best friends. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm not looking at it like it is Dance Moms and there's a pyramid. But along the lines, along the way, you will have certain people that you want to keep at that top of the pyramid. And it's okay if you have 3 close friends.
Well, I feel like that's the case for me.
Yeah.
I have my boyfriend, and then I would say you, Rachel, Garrett.
Yeah.
And then I would say you, I'm afraid I'm like offending someone, but I don't think anyone would be offended. That's pretty fair assessment of.
And then from there, you also have close friends,
who are like,
but
still in that circle who I just don't speak to every single day. But
correct.
I still obviously have like the people who I go on vacation with and
yes.
who I like see at family events at this point.
Yes.
But people who I like keep in contact with on a daily basis, there's 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Used to be like, I used to have so many goddamn texts in a day. It was sick. Like 2020, not even like pre-lockdown, I would scroll on my phone and I would have about 50 to 60 different text threads happening in one day from like waking up to going to sleep.
Yep.
How did I keep in contact with that many people?
And you
why?
did that job. It was crazy. It's shocking. I can't be in one group chat and not feel overwhelmed.
Group chats are really...
We've talked about it before, but group chats, it's like you text people separately. You know what I mean?
I think we've watched the end of the group chat.
Yeah.
I think that the group chat has become something to say, here's a plan.
Yep.
Anyone want to come? And that's pretty... Or like a news, you drop some exciting announcement in that chat, but I'm not in any chat anymore that is popping off 24/7.
And
when something happens, like every time Trump gets potentially assassinated, like then that's when my group chats pop off. Yeah. Otherwise, like...
It's usually an assassination attempt.
A celebrity death. Or some sort of natural disaster. It's always actually kind of gotten to a point of like horrible CNN. News. Yeah, it is like CNN. It's keeping us in the loop, and I think that is actually with the beauty of friendship. It's like sometimes we need you to be educated on what's going on, so that you can tell us.
And then you can tell other people that you might get in contact with. If they start talking about it, you don't feel like you're the odd man out.
Well, you can just also, Andrew, you could just read the news.
And I do, Joe. I read that every day.
You couldn't even say that sentence.
I read every day.
Okay.
I hate to ask you this question, and I don't want to unravel.
Go ahead.
Have you ever felt like a bad friend?
Of course, every single day of my life. I'd have to agree with you. I think it's every single day of my life. It is crazy. I wonder if that pressure ever leaves us, because like at some point you start a family and you have like bigger, different priorities. Like I wonder if my parents feel like bad friends to their friends. You know what I mean? Or is that like just not a fucking problem at some point? They have bigger problems in your life. But yeah, I mean, I think about how my number one issue is also communication. But it's like, I do reach out, but I'll reach out to someone and then I won't respond to their text for 2 months. And I do that with people who I want to see, people who I want to speak to them. I want to hang out with them. People who, like Michelle, my friend Michelle from college, who lives so close, one subway stop away, and lived at the same subway stop last year. And we saw each other like 4 times because it's just so hard to like actually get a plan on the books. And then like when someone's text is waiting for a response, it's like immediate guilt. It's never a reflection of like my views of their friendship. It's like something else is just overarching like depression or pressure that makes it harder to actually like see someone.
I feel like for you, at least when you were like smoking a little bit of weed, you were feeling like that was the constant. It's been the through line. Do you think that you've been feeling bad? Because I wouldn't say, again, from my perspective, I wouldn't say you're necessarily a bad friend at all, but that's something that I feel like you harbor.
Yeah, I mean, same to you. I would consider you like, I mean, obviously the best friend, but I think that it's something you ruminate on. It's like when like, it's what we were talking about on Patreon a few weeks ago. It's like when you just start deciding to just talk shit about yourself in your head for an hour and a half, and weed usually is the catalyst for that. But for me, I haven't smoked weed in like a year. I'll just still go through the list of the things that I think I've done wrong all night and be like, okay, so I'm horrible. Feeling like shit is still not enough incentive for me to respond to a text.
Yeah.
It's still not. But then it's like,
then
I'm putting it off. And the longer you put off the text, the worse and worse it gets.
Because there's nothing worse than responding.
Sorry, just saw this.
I'm
going to have to start being more open about it and being like, I'm sorry, I got your text and you sent it. I was really overwhelmed with other things at the time. I'm sorry. You know that you wouldn't know it, but there was like this meme at one point. Like it was like, how to tell your friends that you were too busy to talk to them. And it was like, someone's like, I'm in a crisis, and you're like, I'm so sorry, I'm at like emotional capacity right now, I could like respond to you in a few days, or like I suggest speaking to someone else. Like that's like actually
that's how you feel.
But like everyone, like it is an insane thing to say to someone, but it also is like at some point with the world we're living in.
Yeah, no.
We're all at capacity.
We all are. And the people that like we see every single day are the ones that are getting the most of us. And that's about how much you can give. Yeah. Do you think that when you were like, and I wonder if this is the case for a lot of people, and I wonder if I'm going to feel that as well, but do you feel like you became worse of a friend or a bad friend, quote unquote, when you got into a relationship? Or did you feel absolved from a little bit of that because you knew people knew you were in a relationship?
I don't know. I remember I definitely was just like looking back at pictures from like 2021. I was like, I had a plan every day.
Yeah.
Also, I was younger, but I had a plan every single day. Like, it'd be like, go out, go crazy, wake up in the morning, go to someone's apartment, have brunch, go shopping with someone else, go to dinner that night, out again, wake up, go to Long Island, do this thing, come back, go. Like every single day it was do something with someone else. And I mean, just statistically that changed when I started dating Ross. For sure, like when me and Ross started dating, I was like, how do I split my time between like, but especially at the beginning, it's like this stranger who I'm now dating and like the people who have known my entire life. Like, how do you choose to make the commitment to this person without spending more time with them? So it is kind of like a double-edged sword. But yeah, I never wanted to be someone who like brought my boyfriend around my friends, you know, unless like the situation called for it. So I think that also actually caused more separation. I always was someone who I'd be like, why is your boyfriend here? Why is your boyfriend with us? Like we've all known each other forever. Like whatever it is, like your boyfriend now has to be involved in every single plan. I kind of stand by that. In some ways. But I do think in other ways, it definitely isolates you. I feel like everyone goes through that where it's like your like best friend gets into a relationship and you're like, oh, suddenly you have like a person who you go to that's not me anymore. And it's a really weird feeling.
It is really weird. And listen, I'm not saying this, no shade.
Oh, no.
No tea. But I have two things. The first thing is I understand what you're saying because I feel like I've been in situations, not with you and Ross, but in situations, even in college or whatever, somebody gets into a relationship and then I'm like, oh, they actually could give two shits about me. I was your friend first and you don't care about me anymore.
You were the sub for a relationship.
Correct. And it's like you put yourself in those situations and then that person finds love, maybe hasn't had love. And that's why I'm a little bit nervous, but I think I've learned along the way about like not spending every single waking moment with a person that you just meet. Yes, they deserve your love and attention, but at the same exact time, you need balance. I will say at the beginning of your relationship, to your point, there was exclusivity, which I think that you needed to get to know your partner. But then it would be like if you guys were like eating food in your room and I was in the living room, I'm like, oh, they don't want to be with me. Which, sure, you don't want to be with me. But I think that in those moments, it's like I spiral. I'm like, oh, I'm the bad friend. Or I'm like he doesn't want to bring him around me because it's weird.
Right, which is so crazy.
Which is not right. It's not true.
No, but I get it. I'm sure that makes total sense. Yeah, and in my head, I'm like, I don't want to bother Andrew by being like a third wheel. Like at this like dinner that we're having for no reason. Like that was like my main concern. Obviously now I think that's out the window.
For sure. We're eating bento boxes. Is that how you say it?
It's amazing that this is a challenge for you. Yeah, it's bento box.
Okay.
We've been saying benten box.
Benten box. Okay, you need to recognize I grew up in a family that my dad can't say soda. You know what? He says soda.
Yeah,
so like you add a little something at the end of things for a flair, and that's just not the truth. But yeah, we're all eating bento boxes around the dinner table.
Yeah, but there is that. I mean, especially when you're in like a true codependent friendship. Like I think that we both can attest to the start of the pod being like the most unhealthy version of our. Well, I don't actually know about that.
It was almost the best. It was the best it's ever been.
It was kind of the best it ever was. But in terms of emotional boundaries and shit, like we had none of that, which I think was amazing when it was good. But then when it got scary, Shelter Island, we slowly started to realize what that could potentially mean.
And there was no separation, and I think that is where it got. Because again, I want everyone to know. Like, and most of you do, but I still talk to people and they're like, you live with Joe?
I know, it always shocks people.
I'm like, no, we live together.
It feels so different now in this new apartment, though.
For sure.
Like, that last apartment was the biggest mistake we ever made on every possible level. But on just a social communication-wise one, that was the biggest mistake. Like, the fact that neither of us ever used the living room.
No.
We were like never in there in a social way because it was your bedroom.
It was my bedroom.
Basically.
Yeah.
It was so bad. But yeah, no, I feel like now, I mean, the introduction of a third friend is really helpful, having Garrett as a roommate, but also like I do feel like physically it doesn't feel like we live together.
Yeah, no. I think this is such an interesting episode. We're so even keeled.
Yeah,
I love
know.
that.
It's a whole different tone.
It's a whole different tone.
It's
and
kind
you
of
know
really
what? It's kind of really fascinating. It's really interesting. But
it's like we're on a panel.
This is like, guys, any single time we do an interview, like for Spotify, for an article, anything, it's like
this is the tone
they put a camera on us and a microphone, and we're talking to people like
this,
like we're Jane
wearing
Goodall.
a fucking blazer.
Wearing a blazer, exactly. And then they're like, "Oh, that was sweet." Meanwhile, they were expecting us to be like,
piss shit foreskin,
the Buddha beep bop beeps, and they're like, okay. I was gonna say, what's the advice? Because I think that a lot of our listeners, or like people in general, like we genuinely could not have been more of best friends moving in with each other. And I know that when I was saying to people that I was moving in with you,
people
they were like,
be careful.
Be careful.
Yeah.
That's like scary. And I think it also goes into, I mean, it's different in a relationship for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that you can carry certain things over to one. But like, what's our advice for our listeners that are moving in with their friend? Like, what did we do that kept it working? Because there were some things that we didn't do that was kind of getting scary.
Yeah. I think what we did do, I don't think we did anything on purpose to keep it working.
Yeah, no.
We just hung out constantly.
Yeah.
And like we do have a pretty solid foundation. We had at that point it was like 21 years of knowing each other.
So it's like it's a different situation for.
But I think in terms of like emotional maturity, we weren't there yet.
No.
Like we were. I don't think that I was aware of your quirks nor my quirks moving in together. Not even like in terms of living, but just like what I mean to you and what you mean to me.
Yeah.
Took like this podcast to really sort out how we move around each other. I think what we didn't do well was set up communication ever. Still kind of to this day, but a little bit better, I would say.
It's better to a point where it's like, I don't think that we get aggravated as much, at least in the past month. I haven't felt it.
It's been amazing, you guys.
Because it's been really, really beautiful. Because I feel like we've like, with the podcast, we're in the groove. We've passed off certain tasks to certain people. Like, it feels like we're now in our own, and it doesn't all fall on one person or the other. But yeah, no, we wouldn't communicate. And then to go into the bad friend thing, my biggest anxiety is not normally about you, but it is like my whole thing has always been not feeling good enough, or feeling like I should have done something more, or I could have done something more. And then you ruminate on that, and then you're like, oh, I'm a shitty person and I'm a shitty friend.
Yeah.
And I think that is sometimes what would come out of the direct living together. I feel like when there was separation from each other, even though we might not have talked every single day, I never felt like a bad friend. Yeah. But since it's so personal and so intimate, I felt that a lot more.
Yeah.
You know?
With the podcast,
with the podcast, and with just the general, like...
Well, it's working together. I think when we also announced that we were going to do the podcast together and it started working, people also were like...
Be careful.
It's tough working with a friend. Like, it's really not easy to, like, start a business, basically, with a friend. And I was like, we're going to be fine. Like, literally, like, whatever. And that's also true. Like, I think my number one advice, if you and your bestie are the funniest people you know, and you're like, we should start a podcast, I want you to imagine the two of you solely funding your lives on that podcast. Who is working? Who is doing this part of the project? Who is doing this part? And I want you to imagine you on your worst possible day with that person, and if you could make it past that. Because I don't think if you can make it past it, you shouldn't do it. I actually think you should do it alone.
For you specifically, it's like you weren't having a good day. You're overworked. You're feeling tired. You're feeling this. I pop in. I'm like, hey, you need a little something. You want something. And like, you've been at your desk all day and you're like, actually, I'm going to fucking explode. Because what do you do? Right? And like, those are things that... If you have a foundation of friendship for that long, you can understand there is certain strengths that we bring aside from just like the actual editing and the socials and things like that. But it takes time to learn. But did you ever think that we were going to, did you ever think we were going to be like the next Caller Daddy? At a second, because I look at that and I know that I don't think we've talked about it before. And like they've went their own ways. They're both.
Well, I
doing their own
actually
thing.
pray to God will be the next Call Her Duty in some ways.
So no, actually, I'm throwing it out there, and I'm gonna say, listen, I want $125 million.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll take that. I'll be fine with that.
I'll talk about sucking. We talk about sucking dick and cock. Like, what do you want me to do?
She doesn't even do that anymore, though.
No, I know she doesn't.
Yeah.
She's interviewing the next president of the United States.
It's crazy.
So
I honestly did think that there'd be a moment. I thought that our friendship was over.
Yeah.
Like, it actually got to that point, which is so crazy.
I thought it was over probably I would say about 3 months ago, because I mean, like, Shelter Island, we all know that story. We all knew it was going to shake up a little bit.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, we're good, we're getting along. And then it got to a point where I think when we moved into this apartment, which it was fine, like maybe the first week, and then I think that it was like,
it was the
how
end.
can we avoid each other at all costs?
It was crazy.
And then feeling like I was only talking through Garrett and you were talking to Garrett, and Garrett was like, I'm not going to say anything, but I think that you guys probably should have a conversation.
The amount of times that Garrett said that to me, it actually is so crazy. And also, what's even more insane, this is another testament to how insane we are. We haven't had this
No, we haven't had the conversation.
You just revealed that we've been having this conversation with Garrett behind the scenes.
Yeah. It was more of like, I think exactly what we were talking about, though.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's more layers to it, but I do believe, like, at least from my perspective, it was more being like, I don't know what to do because there's no communication. So I'm not doing anything, but I'm feeling like I need to hear from him what he wants me to do. But I think it worked because then I tried, at least podcast sake, this was like friendship aside, because I think that sometimes when you go into work with your friend, unfortunately it blurs friendship and business.
And this is a podcast about our friendship, which also makes it even more, it's not like we're sitting here talking about Dua Lipa.
No.
You know?
And there are moments where I'm like,
God, if only.
God, if we were only talking about
so it's like,
Dua Lipa.
There were times, this summer where we actually like literally only spoke on the podcast.
Yeah.
Which is, we would like not ignore each other, but like the times when we sat down and had an actual conversation was exclusively like to record the podcast.
And it's scary because it's like when the camera goes on, it's like you perform. Yeah. You perform to the camera.
best of your ability.
To your best of your abilities. If you
People
guys
clocked it in a few comments, in a few episodes.
They were like, the energy
like
is
something's
off.
up. Yeah.
It's so interesting if you go back from the actual episode 1 through the episode 120 maybe 20 to clock the episodes that you were like maybe they weren't happy. Aren't good, but they're doing it. They're doing
it anyway. They don't care.
But then, like, also I think we lost sight of, like, when you're friends and you're business, it's like we weren't going to dinners, we weren't doing things together. Everything was in a social gathering, and it was like we weren't together, and we were not ignoring each other but ignoring feelings.
It also was like it got to a point where we would socialize, but we were only really socializing when we were invited to the same PR event.
Yes.
So like we would hang out basically at work, and it wasn't like we were actually hanging out. It was like, oh, we were both walking into the event together, but then like we're gonna find someone else to speak to.
I also think that it's helpful that you're doing your own content, and I'm trying to do mine as well. I want to lean into food and fitness, and you're leaning into like character acting and things like that. So I think that also is like, our careers have been hinged upon each other for so long, which they still are for a lot of the opportunities, but we also can still create our own paths for each other. It doesn't feel like I'm benefiting exclusively off you or vice versa, which is nice for sure. I will say, when it comes to the bad friend of it all, though, and I know that for our listeners, they also are either the Garrett or the Joe or the Andrew, who are the friends that are talking to the other friend about how they're feeling about the other friend. But then you do feel in turn, when you are voicing your opinion, then afterwards you feel like the most annoying person, but you're also like, not that I was ever really upset, but then I was like, oh, I fucking suck, huh? Because Joe's talking about me to my friend, and I'm talking about Joe to my friend. So it's like both of us are talking behind each other's backs.
And like Garrett, very acutely aware. In the most like the least shadiest way.
Correct.
He'd be like, well, Andrew's coming to me with the same issues. So
he's like, I love the both of you.
It's so crazy. Like, and that just goes to show you, like, and I know we've been saying it for years now, but the avoidance is so bad. Like, we both knew that we were both going to Garrett with the same issues, and Garrett was saying, speak to each other, and we still didn't.
And he said, you know what, if we want to take it the next step, I'll mediate.
I was like,
we should have. I was like, you know what, it like, I guess the next flare up, if there is a flare up, but hopefully there's not. If that's the case, I think the learning lesson is communication. It's like, I do better in person.
I know, and I do better in text.
And you do better in text,
but it's kind
that
of
makes
like
me spiral. But
I
I understand
grow up and
compromise.
talk in real life, though.
But you don't have to just sway one
I'm
side.
getting better though at that. Like, I think I could handle it. I do think I could handle an actual conversation. I also think it's just like that's what human beings are supposed to do.
Sure.
So it's kind of like I could figure it out.
For sure. But I think that like that's just you just have been you don't hide behind a phone, but I think that like even like we've talked about the coming out stories, we talk about things that are hard. It's so much easier to be able to like, because you're good with words.
Yeah.
But like, then I don't know how you're presenting that information to me. I think that's what it is. It's like, oh, I choose the tone from your text, and I'm like, oh, he said this, and he's fucking mad. Meanwhile, you're like, at the end, you're like, no, and it's honestly like, I don't want you to spiral. Yeah. And then I'm like, already there.
I know, it is so crazy.
Crazy. Listen, I love episodes like this.
No, same. It really is. I think it's genuinely important.
It is.
What's so wild to me is, well, one thing, I did a full moon ritual about a month and a half ago.
Yes. And I think things changed after your full moon ritual. Well, because
the ritual I did was mainly about the two of us and how to fix what was happening. And I'm not I am a witch, of course, but like, I really do. Like, I remember like waking up the next day and I was like, oh, something shifted. Yeah. What's so wild is sometimes you're in a situation and you are presented with the obvious answers and you still don't realize it, or like you don't realize that you can just fix it. Like it was so that like the podcast is our entire lives in a way that is incredible and amazing. It's a Monday. We've done 3 episodes. We've been shooting for hours. It's only 3 p.m. We're gonna be done with our work for the next 2 weeks. That's crazy. It's beautiful, but it also really feels like you actually cannot take a step back and see it for what it actually is, because we do not get a break from it. No. Which is like really wild to think about. Like there has not been, except for maybe twice,
that we've taken like a little hiatus.
Yeah. Actually never, because there's always been a Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
So truly for the past...
And we want to stay relevant on that Patreon.
Yes. And again, like we want to give you what you paid for, but for the past like... How many months is that we have been sitting down for at minimum an hour, if not 2 hours a week?
Like 30 months.
That's crazy. And talking about our lives, unfiltered, like whatever, like I'm bringing up shit that we don't talk about outside of the camera. Yeah. And then I sit there and I edit it and then post it. And again, like that's what I'm saying. I never once looked at that and was like, what? Because you offered many times to at least do the posting. Yeah. So many times you were like, I could do the posting. And I still was just like, I'll just do it. Yeah. Which like that alone, the moment you started posting, I was like, oh, this feels so much better. Like now, I mean, now you've taken up almost more work than I do in the present moment.
With the posting?
With everything.
Yeah. No, not even. I mean, I think that we're catching up here. I think
there's unfortunately, due to me, there's years of catch up. There's years of catch up. But that's not really on you.
No, but we're doing it. And I will say the people that are DMing the Good Children Instagram and the TikTok, it's me now. Okay,
I don't even have access.
People were like, okay, love you, Joe. I'm like, okay, need to clarify.
Yeah, it is crazy. Andrew is doing all of that.
So
I literally am not logged into the Instagram or the TikTok.
No, he's not.
Which is like
in.
For works. I was going to say for worse. It is simply for worse.
It is, no, actually,
I'm like, absolutely. Can you post a story?
I know it is for worse because it was work. Listen, not to say that like you really helped grow those socials because you know what you were doing, and now you're kind of handing it off to somebody who's like keeping the boat floating in a sinking ship. No, it's not actually. But what is so special about this podcast, and sometimes we lose sight of it, and like we're funny, we do the bits, we do the dress ups and everything, but I think that what resonates with people is like sometimes when we don't have conversations and then they come on this podcast and we talk about it, that's how people believe that they're listening to authentic conversation, which it is authentic conversation because we are friends, and everything that we say on this podcast, I would say most of the things that we say on this podcast are always 100% true. That's a good way to put it. But especially in like the more even toned episodes, it's like these are conversations that we want you guys to have with your best friends too. I know Selena Gomez said, I needed to lose you to love me, but sometimes you don't need to lose the people that you love to love yourself. Okay.
Yeah, that's
truth.
really an interesting way to put it. That's a really unique way to put it.
Yeah.
No, it's true. I also think that like this is an example of like if someone is harboring something with their friend, like I mean we didn't come into this blind. I think that we have had like conversations, albeit like in passing statements about this. So it's not like we sat down here at our peak like tension and then suddenly relieved everything. But it also is like we're having a conversation that you could have with your friend about something, and like it is actually we're both gonna end this episode happier than we did starting it. And we weren't unhappy starting it. We were actually in a great place starting it. But yeah, it is like, I don't know, I think a lot of feeling like a bad friend comes from not talking. I really do think, because especially, we've said it before, but when your friendship is founded on joking and banter and making each other laugh and trying to like get the best joke in at all times, like to then turn around and be like, but on a serious note, it is the scariest thing you could possibly do. And it is historically so much easier to have like a scary conversation with Ross than it could ever be with you, because I've been having them since like week 2 with Ross. But for you, it's like we've had maybe 2 serious conversations in our entire life. And we did set ourselves up for a job where serious conversations are just inherently a part of it. So it is like, if we could keep pushing it away, but it's just right in front of us, no matter how far we push it.
Because when you think about it this way, when you get married to somebody or you're in a relationship with somebody, your whole goal is, if you're under the contract of marriage, to say till death do us part, right? Like in sickness and in health. And I do believe that in our world, we have pushed past the limits of time when it comes to friendship, since we're only 28 years old and we've been friends for 24 of those years. That's actually like a long marriage for people. And in a world in which divorce is very common, if you put that in the context of friendship, I think that we are out of the norm when it comes to being friends for that long. So instead of us experiencing divorce or a friend breakup, you learn to keep it going. But we're not in a relationship where you're having those hard conversations with Ross, right? Like people have, that's why when I see my friends in relationships as well and they fight, obviously always the first thing you say is like, that's so normal though. Like you guys don't just give up on each other after you have a fight, but at least you have a fight. We're not having fights. We're fighting ourselves.
It'd actually be so amazing if we fought. Imagine we, for one day, can you imagine we screamed at each other?
No,
Can you imagine?
I actually can't imagine.
I actually think that would change our lives.
I think so too.
The next time that we're mad at each other, I think
Karen's gonna be like,
come in, just walk in the door screaming. I actually think that would change our lives. But yeah, it is truly a marriage. Like, and it's also, what's crazy is we have said it since episode 1, and maybe our opinions have wavered over time, but our idea is to never stop doing this, which means we're committed to each other
forever,
for life, like since 4 years old, for life, to do something creatively together, something like business wise together. And if it's this podcast, that's psychotic. That's a psychotic choice. But it's like, who else would I ever do it with? And that's also like, I think, a major part of it. And I think it becomes easy to take it for granted. But I said this to you a few weeks ago when we were walking into those podcasts that we were doing. Like, if I was doing this alone, I would not be doing it. Like, and I know that you've said to me about like the technical side of things and the social sides of things, that's like something that you credit me for. But I have to credit you for even doing it in the first place. You know what I mean?
To a podcast.
I would not be doing this by myself. I would not have said yes to probably 80 to 90% of the opportunities we've been given if it was just on me. But because I know that, 1, you want to do it, and 2, you'll say yes to basically anything.
Truly.
I think the only times you say no to things is when I do say like, I actually don't think we should do that. That's pushed me to being where we are. So it really is, even though we have 2 years of of a psychotically imbalanced workload that was a monster of my own making, it is all a wash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I really want to say it's a wash, truly. And we're stepping into this next chapter, like, as true equals in this.
Equals.
Like, because you contributed just as much, if not more, than me. Truly.
You guys were gonna start crying.
I am crying.
He was crying. I saw his eyes getting teary, and I was like, "Oh shit!"
It's just true. Like, it's so fucking stupid to like ever let something that's born out of fun and born out of pureness and has been nothing but fun opportunities ever spoil into something that it's not.
Yeah.
And I think that going forward, that is like the mentality.
It is. We're stepping into a new chapter, and I honestly am very excited. It's healing in a way that like we're getting to a point where I had no other choice but to give up.
Yeah.
Which is like, and again, that goes for any friendship aside from just business. It's like when you feel like you can't do anything else, it's like, there it goes.
Yeah.
But obviously that's not 100% on you literally at all. But at least it's having those conversations and recognizing that's the place that we're at. But because I do not want you to feel like you are a bad friend to me ever again, period.
Same.
Period. And
it's not, it's like, it's actually stupid.
It's insane.
It is stupid.
We're insane people.
We are.
When it comes to friendship, because you're like, how could you be a bad friend? Unless I let myself stay in really toxic, scary places that I can't even like be conscious enough to recognize I'm in like an abusive situation. But that's not it. Like you wouldn't be bad because I wouldn't be here for 24 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, period.
Yeah.
Have to end it with period. Had to. So should we almost go on to the others, or do we want to continue to self-soothe?
47 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
I love that this episode turned into us like, again, the intention was to talk about if you've been bad friends.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it necessarily was
not us. Not
but
at all.
It actually was much better that way.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And I think, but again, it gets applicable to everyone. Obviously, we're in a pretty unique situation, but everyone has that friend that, like, it's what you're saying. Like, I would never want you ever to think you've been a bad friend because I know you haven't, like, just factually. And also, it's like, this is a problem I have with people's like dating histories too. It's like when people like fight with their partner with the intention of making that person feel bad, I'm like, why are you, like, what's the point? What's the point? Like, if you want someone who you love to feel bad, it's like, that's not, like, that doesn't sound right to me. It's like, maybe you want them to like feel remorse or like feel sad, feel something for you, but it's like, I don't know, the idea of us ever putting each other in any situation where we feel bad doesn't make sense at this point in the game.
No.
It's like, I want to make sure going forward that we both feel good about ourselves.
Correct.
And the friendship, and then secondary to that, with respect to it, the podcast.
Yeah. And I think that the learning curve for everybody from what we've said is you should never feel like a friendship is a job.
Yeah.
And I think
well,
exactly. I think that for us, we're learning first the friendship happened and then it became a part of our job. But I don't think that our friendship solely exists because of a job.
Well,
and
certainly not.
Certainly not. And I think that like in moments aside from Joe that I feel like I've been a bad friend is where I feel like there are expectations for me to meet certain requirements when it comes to conversation, communication, touch points, visits, hangouts, all those different things. And then I spiral and say, I have to give up. And that's where I feel like it becomes a job.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be what friendship is. It should be an even street and an even playing field. That's why I think for us, job aside, stepping forward together equals regardless of the place that you're at in your friendship.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah.
What I love is that I don't smoke weed anymore. And it's amazing. I feel like my brain is clear.
That's
I feel
amazing.
like my brain is clear. Sorry, I just had to say that. Anyways.
That's crazy after a week.
After a week, it just is out of my system. Anyways.
Yeah, probably, though. It's true. Yeah, I mean, so many listeners that we have have podcasts with their best friends, want to do a podcast with their best friends, want to do something creatively with their best friends. Like, I really, really, really think the most important thing you could do at the start is find a way to find balance. I think the moment things get out of, I mean, also, like, I don't know why so much of this is coming back to, like, mysticism for me, but, like, I'm a Libra rising. I feel very passionate about things being, like, fair and even, and when that gets skewed is when I, like, spiral and I get upset. Like, just finding ways to make sure everyone feels, and it's not even, like, it's so crazy. It's like, I feel like we're looking back at, like, a full chapter of our lives in this episode, because it does feel so behind us. But it's, like, not even in terms of, like, I'm doing a lot of work, but, like, for you to feel like you aren't is equally as bad of a feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, equally as bad. And that those two things coming to a head for 2 years is crazy.
Yeah. You were doing a lot of work, and I was doing a lot of mental work.
Yeah, it's just like the answers were very obvious. The answers were right in front of us the whole time, and sometimes it takes 2.5 years to figure that out. But if you really love someone, if you really, really care about a person, I think you could figure it out.
It's worth more to keep that person in your life than to give up. Yeah. I'm gonna start sobbing. Unlimited. Together we're unlimited. Together we're gonna be this team there's ever been. Glinda dreams the way we plan them. If we work in tandem, there's no fight we cannot win. Just you and I defying gravity. Wow, I can't wait to perform that live to an audience.
And I can't wait for us both to fly.
Fly.
Literally cannot wait for us both to fly. Like, I really do think that is also the symbolic end of a chapter.
Correct.
Is we're both gonna fly.
We're both gonna
defy gravity, and maybe our lives are not like Wicked at all.
Maybe they're not.
You know what I mean?
Maybe we don't leave somebody behind.
Maybe we don't need to insert ourselves into every jewel that's ever existed and say this is me and this is you, because maybe it's just Andrew and Joe.
Yeah, and I would hope too, like, that one day, like, you never steal my man.
Yeah, and I would hope that you would never let me fly off as a convict and you become the mayor of Oz.
It's like 20 years from now.
There. It's just really right there. It's
so close. It's so close.
Oh, God. So we have about 400 voicemails.
Great.
So what I'm thinking is we listen to some of them now, and maybe we listen to the other half on Patreon.
Love it.
I just, like, keep remembering that this is, like, the election episode and getting the sickest pit in my stomach. So I just need to move past that.
Move past it because you can't control it. If you had the chance to change your fate, would you?
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I think wasn't the right question to ask.
Okay.
Good children to the guidance office. Today we asked our listeners, tell us about a time that you felt like you were a bad friend or someone was a bad friend to you. And we're going to listen to them. We're going to dissect it coming from a perspective where we just had our conversation. And this, I hope, if these people are still in your lives and there's still the opportunity to have a conversation, that you listen to this episode and you say, you know what? I can do what they just did, and I can have the conversation about where I want to see our friendship because I care about them. And if it's already chapter closed, listen, it's never too late to reopen something.
Unless it's keeping it closed,
scary,
forever. Bury it underground 6 feet in some situations.
For sure.
Oh my God, our first caller is from Australia.
We're gonna do an Australian show. I'm being serious. I want to.
Hi guys, this is your bad friend story. My name is Lee. I'm from Australia, and my story is pretty recent. I moved in with my best friend of 3 years, and she completely fucked me over in many ways, including threatening to stop being friends with me to get her own way. But the worst thing she did was when I told her about this person I liked, and instead of telling me that she also liked them, she started going out with them, and then told me after they hooked up that this person liked her and not me. Lesbians, right? Anyway, love your show. We don't live together or talk anymore. So, anyway, bye.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for making that international phone call.
Yeah, because that could have cost money.
It was just under a minute.
Oh, so she probably saved some bucks.
Yeah.
Listen, this has nothing to do with that.
We have to.
We're doing a live show in Australia because I have to go there. I have to get there.
I know.
I
know. You're going to come with me.
For a week. I can meet you there. For 5 days. For a week. I just have to go back again. In our new wave of friendship. It's going to be so beautiful.
I know.
You know? And I can show you the places. Anyways, Lee. Okay, that is just simply a bad friend to what our point before. You dig them underneath. Well, you're not digging the grave for them, but that's something that you don't reopen that conversation.
Yes. Also, it
that's
puts
shitty.
into perspective for us. I think also it's like, miscommunication versus like actively trying to see someone's downfall. It's really upsetting. I'm sorry. I actually have never been in a situation that intense with a friend in my life. Everything's been a lot less, maybe less petty or more petty than that. I don't know which way you'd put it. Less direct than that.
But it feels like, too, in that moment, obviously you were not in the wrong, but it sounds like that person was not your friend.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do that to somebody you considered a friend, especially if you knew there were underlying feelings. There's been people that Joe has talked to before and been on like one date with, and then I see them like me and I wouldn't even go close to them.
Yeah.
It almost made them feel like they're disgusting probably. But like that is like respect of friendship. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have to have some loyalty there.
Yeah. And you know what? You dodged a bullet.
Yeah, you dodged a bullet. Let that sink in. Like, you actually are in the better situation here, and you're also in Australia.
And
you know what? Hey, yesterday was the election. We might be there soon, forever.
Hi, Joe and Andrew. My name is Henry. I started watching like clips of Good Children about like a year ago. But now I am a full-fledged good child. I've been spreading the gospel. So it feels like it's finally time to call in. You guys were asking about bad friends. So I had this friend, and we were inseparable for maybe about like 3 years. And then I moved like 10 hours away. So we both took it kind of hard, and our strategy was maybe not the best, but we pledged to FaceTime every night. And so for months, we FaceTimed like every single night. My dog just growled. And then one day I went back and visited my hometown, and we met for dinner, and the vibes were just totally off. And we really fizzled out very quickly, and I don't know why. So I've apologized in case I did anything, and I've like offered to chat anytime, but she insists that nothing is wrong, yet we're like not friends anymore. Do you think this is a sign that I'm like a bad friend and I just don't realize it? Any advice is appreciated. Okay, love you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, first of all, Henry, thank you for spreading the good word. Thank you for listening. And I feel like
so sweet.
So sweet. And I think the first part of that, where like we were saying before, like you have a close friend who you hang out with for the first time in a while, and you're like, oh, we have nothing to talk about. Seems like that was what that dinner was maybe you both have changed a lot. Moving 10 hours away from your hometown changes you for sure as a person.
Yeah.
And someone staying in their hometown also kind of changes who they are.
I think it's hard. I think it's really hard to set the foundation of your new friendship based on FaceTiming every single day.
Yeah.
And I think that while you look back on it, you're like, oh, that's amazing. Like we're in contact every single day. But then to my point from before, it starts to become less of routine and more of work. And I think that you might not have seen it at that time, but that's probably not sustainable. And even if you were to be able to fall off from there and it started to become one time or 2 times, it still would feel like it never would live up to where it was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like if you feel like you did something wrong, you're in your head. Just like, again, if Joe wasn't saying anything to me and I was like, what did I do that was wrong? Like I must have done something wrong. Like I'm the bad friend, right? Like if she's not willing to open up the conversation and be vulnerable and honest, because she might be really scared or like nervous about confrontation, very similar to us, then it's gonna stay where it's at.
Yeah.
But if you feel too like it's still worth another try, another conversation, and come at it from the angle that we did and say like, I care about you and I want to keep you in my life, but like, do you hate, like, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
How can a person not respond to that?
Yeah. I also think it's really sad when a friend moves away. And I think that that's probably not, I mean, I experienced that, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, all of my friends basically moved away after high school and I didn't. And our friendship, obviously, as we talked about, changed dramatically at that time. We like also were not ever really texters in the first place to communicate. So I think that like we did the opposite of that, but I didn't really communicate. And then when we did hang out, it was like old times every time.
Yeah.
I don't think you're one of the only people, if not the only person, who doesn't really matter how long I see you.
Yeah.
There's never like a buffer zone of getting back into our swing of things.
No.
Obviously now it's been 3 years, so maybe when we do live apart, there'll be that moment, because it's been insane for the past over 3 years now. I think it's nice that you apologized. To your point, it's up to the person who's upset to tell you why they're upset, unless you explicitly know you did something that they asked you not to do, or you crossed a boundary that you know for a fact you did. It is not up to you to guess and to make assumptions and to play Sherlock Holmes about why someone's upset with you. It is a sign of like emotional immaturity that person is not telling you. And that's speaking from very, very, very varied personal history of my own inability to communicate problems. Like it is, and it stresses you out. Obviously it stresses out the person who feels that they did something wrong, but you have to tell yourself, I can't let this eat me up. I can't let myself think I did something wrong if I am not being told what I did that was wrong. Like, it's just not, like, it is a useless feeling. And it's not easy, but whenever you are in that headspace, just remind yourself, like, you asked if you did something wrong. You were told no. You have to move through it as if you did nothing wrong. Because according to all facts and standards and basis here, you did not.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Yeah.
It's just that. It's like, it's crazy to have to guess myself. And like, I feel like I grew up in a household where I did have to play Clue and figure out like what I did wrong all the time. And that like makes you so hyper vigilant and like unable to like actually get through problems. And it's not really healthy.
Guessing is never fun.
No.
Unless you're guessing the color of
my
someone's underwear.
Yeah.
And like, let's leave the guessing to the color of somebody's underwear and not guessing if you actually like me or not, and if you want to be my friend or not, because that's not a friend.
No.
And they should be able to say, hey, what's the color of my underwear? And you say black, lace
and black pair.
And they're saying yes.
Yeah.
So let's leave it there.
You want to guess the color of my underwear right now?
Neon yellow. Oh my God, it's blue. You're wearing your MeUndies.
Can I guess the color of yours?
Yeah. Foreskin?
Jesus Christ.
Hi, Joe and Andrew. My name is Maddie. I literally am obsessed with you guys. I kind of have a horror story. I'll sum it up because I know you hate a long story, but basically, my best friend and roommate in college, we went out one night, she got super drunk, and I couldn't find her anywhere. So I assumed she went home, so I went home with a guy, hooked up with him, came out of my room. I couldn't find him, and I went back to the club, and later that night I come back, and I see his keys are still on our apartment table. And I go in her room, and he's in bed with her. We moved on from it since, but what is your guys' advice on having the same type as your friends, or just drunken mistakes with friends, and how to move on from them maturely? Thank you both. Love ya.
Okay, first of all, I'm like almost primarily concerned for your friend.
Yeah.
If she was like super drunk, went home, and then the next morning she wakes up with a man who was in your room in her bed. You know what I mean?
That seems a little bit like something like I've never heard before. That's wild. I think thankfully, not that we don't have the same type. I think that we can overlap some places, but I think that like we're not going after the same people.
No, definitely not.
Which is actually very beneficial for the both of us.
Yeah. I also think both of us, we never were like, I can't imagine a circumstance where we would ever put like a relationship or like even just like a hookup above the friendship.
No, ever.
Like, I just don't think that that's like, I think we both would rather go home and eat Taco Bell together than like chase a man and go home with them.
Correct.
Not in like a pick me way.
No.
It's just like, that's actually like the setup that we have is like that.
And if I ever knew that that person was with you that night, or you talk to them ever again, it's like, where is the respect?
Yeah,
for
I
friends?
actually don't get that at all. At all.
You can't let somebody have something. It's like, girl.
Yeah, that's a pretty shady. I mean, you've moved past it with your friend, and also again, it seems like people were drunk, and hopefully everyone was drunk in that situation. I think that would make it better, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that if that was like a sober decision, or if your friend like does go after someone that you are like eyeing, I think at some point you have to let it go. You know, like, I think you hooked up with someone 2 years ago, and then like your friend wants to like hook up with them or go on a date with them. Like, if you can't really like let that go, that's like, why? You're hoarding. You're actually wealth hoarding at that point. It's like, give someone else a shot. But that situation is sticky.
It's sticky. But I agree with the letting go. And I think that, like, listen, maybe you stream Learn to Let Go by Kesha. It's a good one.
It's a big Kesha month for you.
It's a big Kesha month. I think it's time to practice what I preach. Exercise the demons inside me. Oh, oh, oh. You gotta learn to let go. I'm tired of rumors starting.
It's time for Right Up My Alley. What's right up your alley this week?
Right up my alley this week is, well, I know it's right up your alley this week, and I'm not going to steal yours, but I feel like I have to almost do the same.
Okay, go ahead.
Right up my alley this week is cooking at home, making my own personal recipes and meals, and not relying on somebody delivering that food to my space. That's right up my alley this week. I think that I've gotten, and I can speak for you as well, I think that we have lost sight of convenience and how easy it is to get food at the touch of your finger. And sometimes it's okay, right?
The main thing I spend money on.
It's the main thing I'm spending money on lately, and I can't keep draining my bank account. So instead of ordering the food to be delivered to my front doorstep, I'm deciding to walk my little feet, to the supermarket and grab some food for the week and cooking some meals. Thank you. That's my Roomba of the week.
I think my Roomba of the week is actually going to be Opal. I'm just thinking about, again, that this is election week, so I'm assuming everyone's really overwhelmed, and I know that we need to have access to information, and it's really good to see what's happening, and like, we should definitely not turn a blind eye to anything in the news. But I think that you are allowed to set a boundary with how often you're receiving information and seeing information. And I think that an app like Opal, that I am constantly plugging as if I literally made it myself, is the best way for me to go to bed without seeing something horrific moments before closing my eyes. And that I do believe is important. And it's obviously a privilege. It's obviously not something that people get to do who are actually living these situations. But in order to continue on and continue being able to exist, I need something to stop me from scrolling. And that's even just entertainment purposes too, obviously. Just seeing a million fucking TikToks and reels and tweets. So I really encourage everyone to download Opal or download another platform that blocks your socials in a way that's more intense than the screen time function on an iPhone does. And give yourself a break from the screens at night. I have mine from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. It's a little extreme that it's 8 p.m., but I get so much more shit done after 8 p.m., even if it's just like making my room tidy and like doing the dishes. Like, it just feels like I'm able to function more. And I definitely get better sleeps because of it. I definitely sleep better. And I just think that that's like something we all need to kind of prioritize, especially going into a cold, dark winter.
So make your food this week, download Opal, and let's really take in what's going on around us and in our personal lives and in our friendships. That is truly what is the most important.
It's all we actually genuinely have. So we should nourish that instead of nourishing our iPhones.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Wow. With that,
I think that's a wrap on the Bad Friend episode. So don't forget to do your homework. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, write a little something. If this episode meant something to you, let us know. Whether that's a DM on Instagram, again, I'm going to see it. Whether that's a written review on Apple Pod. Whether that's clicking 5 stars and rating the show on Spotify. Let us know. Show us the love. And we have some live shows that are coming up as well. I know we keep saying it, but we have a little news for everybody as well, if you didn't see it on socials already. And is that Chicago, our first Chicago show, is sold out. So there's going to be another Chicago show that is happening on February 20th, February 19th, Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm saying this, and I mean this very nicely, Indianapolis. We need you to scoot, and I need you to race those race cars over to our theater in Indianapolis. And then Madison, Wisconsin, we'll see you on February 21st.
for more good children, don't forget to subscribe to Patreon. For just $7 a month, you get access to over 100 bonus episodes, as well as access to a brand new exclusive bonus video and audio episode every single Friday, plus access to 4 chat boards, and who's to say, maybe more are coming.
You know what I mean? It's always a good time. You can find us across all social media platforms at Good Children Pod. I'm on Instagram at Andrew Muscarella.
I'm on Instagram at Joe Hegyes.
So, with that being said, Joe, you're a good friend.
You're a great friend.
You're a good child. You're a good friend.
You're a great child. You're good enough.
You're good enough as
I
well.
love you.
I love you as well. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's not lose sight of that.
No.
And if you have somebody out there that you love and you feel like you're losing them, learn, listen, talk, chat, and let's get that ship back afloat. Okay?
We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
To love, love, to love, love, to love. I needed to lose you to love me. To love, love, yeah. To love, love, yeah. To love, yeah. I needed to lose you to love me.
But again, as I said before, you don't have to lose the person that you love in a friendship to find that you love yourself, okay? You might need to lose somebody who's not worth your time.
Like Lee's friend.
Like Lee's friend. Lose that, Lee.